Reluctant Entrepreneur Tarot. I'm Diane Ideas, Master Certified Coach, and this video takes you behind the scenes of Reluctant Entrepreneur Tarot, Card 11, Executive Dashboard. So, speaking of behind the scenes, something that's not on the website or on Instagram, but is only in the book if you buy the deck and are able to hold it in your hands. This is actually a picture of me and my dad. It's his birthday today. And what I didn't realize when creating this deck until the very end when the cards were already in print, was final editing of the descriptions, and I was writing the introduction, that how much of my experience with my dad, who was a very intuitive businessman and entrepreneur, was integrated into this deck. And one of the things that I talk about is how difficult that first Father's Day was for me after he passed, because there are no cards for the daughters who have lost their fathers. And then these years later, as I created this deck without realizing that how much his spirit and his guidance and wisdom and journey was integrated in this, I said, perhaps then these are the cards for the daughters without their fathers, that with guidance and support, both seen and unseen, I have made them for myself. That's not what I consciously set out to do. I felt a call to share the reluctance of my entrepreneurial journey in hopes it could be helpful to others on theirs, validating those who chose to leap and those who don't. Though, like any journey, loss, entrepreneurial, tarot, coaching, or otherwise, what we start out seeking is not necessarily where we end up. What we learn from the journey can be greater than what we expected. The answers we seek are not always rational. The support we feel on our path is not always tangible. Whether you're new to or seasoned with entrepreneurship or tarot, I hope these cards can support you on your journey. And also, shout out to my dad, whose birthday is today. So, executive dashboard takes a little bit more explanation because people may not know what it is. So, I want to talk a little bit more as we go behind the scenes. It is paired with the justice card. So, you see the scales of justice. Also, we are in Libra season. So, shout out to all the amazing Libras out there as we look at those scales. An executive dashboard is something that tracks your key performance indicators, your revenue, your metrics. A lot of people do it to look at the past and see what happens in the past, but I use it to not only look at the past, but also to forecast and make decisions for the future. So that's why you see the grid and you see the numbers in the background. That's essentially because my executive dashboard just lives in Excel. So what we did on this card is looking at the weighing and measuring of the scales of justice, so tying in that tarot, and then also having that analysis of your metrics and your numbers. This also has the back of the deck in it, and as you see the ocean waves here, they are in line. And when we think about the ocean, it's something powerful. It's not in our control. It's something lethal. It's something beautiful. But at the same time, the tides have tracks. You can track the tides and look at the moon. You can analyze that data and make strategic decisions based on what's happening with the moon and the weather. And so what will happen with the water. So part of, I think, the reluctance for entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs who are not successful or don't sustain their success is that they don't look at their data. And that's, your rational data. And maybe what I also call that intuitive data set, like where are you feeling called to go? What kind of intuitive responses or data are you getting? So regardless of that, like what data are you looking at to analyze to better understand what's happening in your business? And my dad would call this a scorecard. He would always, whenever I was in a new environment or going into something new, he'd be like, okay, what's the scorecard? And he also really loved The Music Man. And so the idea of you got to know the territory. So knowing the territory, having that scorecard, seeing the executive dashboard, think about the dashboard on a vehicle. You, at a glance, you may not know anything about cars, but at a glance, you can tell if the gas tank is full or if the car engine is too hot or how fast you're going. So looking at and being able to translate the complexity of your business and of your data into something that you can use as a tool. And the other thing when we think about scoreboards are just saying what is. We have emotional reactions to scoreboards, but they are just showing us what is there. So this is a very powerful tool and something I absolutely recommend. One resource, so Hawthorne Union is my company and the company that kind of springboarded off into the podcast and then also Reluctant Entrepreneur. If you're not familiar with an executive dashboard or haven't checked us out on YouTube, this is a simple, just short video that shows you how you can start to look at your data over time and layer in those different revenue sources. So check us out on YouTube. The other thing I want to call your attention to is as Hawthorne Union, the first project that Jason and I did together, and my mom was kind enough to edit and walk us through, is Listen Mentor Coaching for Coaches. And I call your attention to that Scales of Justice photo at the bottom. We didn't know at the time that a tarot deck was going to be happening. But at the same time, if you look at that justice scale, you'll recognize it in a moment. So that particular image was the overlay for don't layer judgment on top of your emotion and no judgment in coaching. And what's interesting is the executive dashboard and this tarot card was not a glimmer in my eye at that time, but it's hard to see in this image. But as you see, the justice is behind this image. And then it's also talking about how we layer judgment and on emotion. So one of the things to think about from an executive dashboard perspective, as you lean into your revenue data, as you lean into your expense data, as you lean into the data that your business needs to be successful, it can be really easy to have judgment and beat yourself up. And one of the things you want to do is try to let the dashboard or let the data be what it is, and then have a safe space to look at how to make decisions with it. The purpose here is to have it be a learning tool to help support your success, not just be something that is stopping you or getting you down. So a little bit more from a tarot perspective. So the quote associated with this card is planning is bringing the future into the present so you can do something about it now. So I really feel that from the, from a Virgo perspective, looking at your data and actually seeing like, okay, what seeds bear fruit? What are those performance metrics that are leading into your success? Sometimes you don't have the revenue, especially starting out. So are there things that you need to be measuring that will help you get there, like networking events attended or seminars or speaking engagements and things like that? So this is correlated with the justice card. So you see the scales that are in the card. You also see the sword. So there's that neutrality of the justice card in tarot, that lack of emotion. It's very much the kind of colder, more objective, I should say, perhaps instead of colder, a more objective view. So it's what I was saying about the dashboard. Watch the emotion. It can be helpful to sit down with a coach or someone else and actually look at your executive dashboard and look at your data. So you're able to look at it objectively and look at, okay, what happened in the past? How is this serving me as I look forward to the future? And then from a justice perspective, this is kind of a turning point in the tarot deck and, looking at what's come before, what do we learn from that? And then how does that impact what comes after? So this is kind of that midpoint where we have that reflection of the past and are also making some decisions as you move towards the future. So that is very much the justice card, but also looking at the executive dashboard. So in Tarot for Change, she says Justice in Tarot asks us questions about cause and effect as well as lessons learned. So in order to continue to be an entrepreneur, really looking at what are you learning? How are you learning? How is that serving you in your business? What risks paid off? What risks didn't? What investments paid off? What do you need to be successful? What's your break even? All of these things can be overwhelming questions at first, but one of the benefits of, I think, my being a reluctant entrepreneur, and then also a definite advantage of me having experience as a business coach and on the financial consulting side, is really looking at this data can help businesses and entrepreneurs be more sustainable and more successful, because a lot of people are afraid to look at their money and afraid to look at their metrics. Sometimes they're measuring things that don't necessarily make an impact. So with that justice, that objectivity, that neutrality, that sword, the sword is associated with the intellect in tarot. So that decisiveness, those ideas, but also the measuring and balancing of how are you doing, what is weighing out. It is what you're putting in yielding what you're wanting to take out is important to look at from a business perspective. So some questions to consider. What metrics or business activities can you track to monitor the health of your business? Where can you invest in your business to increase your likelihood of reaching your desired outcomes? How does your actual and anticipated revenue compare with your break even? And how can you leverage your executive dashboard to support your strategic planning? So for me as a coach, I love this stuff. It's like candy to me. Obviously, it's harder when it's your own business, but to me, this is really inspiring. I have a number of videos on this related to money. Check out the executive dashboard video if you're not familiar. This may be something where you want additional support. You want to sit down and have someone walk you through this, because this may be something that's challenging to do on your own, especially if you're not familiar. But at the same time, if you invest time in the executive dashboard, if you take that kind of cool, calm, collected, weighing and measuring justice approach of what served me and didn't, how can this serve me in the future, especially without that emotional attachment, that can be really impactful to the success and sustainability of your business. So if you'd like to listen more, in season 4 of Cross Street Coaching, episode 3, we talk about money. And that's a lot of what I measure on the executive dashboard. You can, of course, measure I used to measure other things like speaking engagements, proposals written, and things like that. But predominantly now I measure revenue, and it also helps me forecast, when do I need to have conversations with clients? When might I have peaks in revenues, valleys in revenues, so that I can plan ahead for those things. The song I chose for this is Quality Control, and part of the reason by Jurassic 5. And this is just a great song. So if you haven't heard it, it's just a great song. Check it out. But as we think about an executive dashboard, I think about revenue streams and the braiding in of revenue streams. And there's these 5 of them. Actually, it looks like there's 6 of them on this. Braiding in of the different revenue streams and the different sources. That's one of the things as people transition from being an employee to an entrepreneur that they don't necessarily think about, the fact that you're no longer getting a singular paycheck, but you're needing to braid in these different revenue to kind of make up your salary, and whether that's clients or different types of engagement. So I think that this song, being quality control, which I think is a lot of what we're doing when we look at the data, but also looking at these different MCs coming in with their different skills. Couple more lines that stuck out. So, my quality control, many styles we hold, let the story be told. Whether a platinum or gold, we use breath control. So the idea of the different styles, but coming in a controlled way. The name of the game is to survive and improve your flow. Stop and comprehend and heed the words of my pen. So what's interesting is they talk about both the pen and the sword. So you think about writing, and then you also think about the sword of justice. Verbal combat, position number 1. We keep it beaming like a beacon. So it's like continue to shine a light on this and look at this data. Your rhymes ain't ripe, homeboy, you ain't in season. So I think there's also important, if you track your executive dashboard over time, you can actually see if there's seasonality. Like I have a client whose business tends to go down in the summer. Do you have certain, I have executive dashboards now for years. So I'm able to see like what is happening each quarter, what's happening each month. My clients and things may change, but sometimes you'll have dips in your energy or in your revenue or in your business or customer. So understanding that seasonality, so it doesn't feel like it's just happening to you, but that you're actually analyzing it and seeing what's in your control. J5 finds a way to remain supreme. I love the power of words, nouns, and verbs, the pen and the sword, linguistic art of war. So what I like also in this song is they're talking about building, like the nouns and verbs build the sentences. And they even said that, you got to get up on your vocab, got to have vocab, letter makes words and sentences make paragraphs. So the idea of building, because when you're initially starting out and especially looking at your data, you're not necessarily tracking that much revenue. My first executive dashboard, it was just trying to pay bills so I wasn't in debt. And, being able to even make my break even was a dream. And then moving from my break even to the salary that I wanted in the state of California was a dream. And so breaking it down though by month, by revenue stream was helpful for me. It made it more digestible. My mental maneuver will clear and steer right through you. Revolutionize, we active build. I plant my dreams in the field and wait to harvest my skills. And I do think that, though in the Empress I talk about planting seeds at harvest, I do think that the kind of some of the feminine energy we see with justice, and then also the idea of that, it's cool, calm, and collected, but you are really looking at the seeds and your dreams and the harvest, because that's part of what the executive dashboard is for. So you can really, in a non-emotional or objective way, see what's happening with your data, see what's happening with your business, make choices that positively impact your business and help you move forward. So if you'd like to learn more, check us out at reluctantentrepreneur.com. You can read these descriptions, the questions, listen to the podcast episode. This video is linked there, and there's different ways to work with us. We're also on Instagram at Reluctant Entrepreneur Tarot. Thanks so much for listening, and we look forward to following up.